Well, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 6 of your podcast, Freelance Medical Writing and Editing. I am the host, Phil Lindeman. On today's program, I want to talk a lot more about how the new website, libertyfreelance.com, is shaping up. I want to tell you about sort of owning your smarts. You know, sort of nerd chic, being proud to be in the science, technology, and medicine space, the STEM space. I want to also get to what's become a regular on this program, the outrage of the week. And I want to tell you all about that. But first, I want to tell you this. So, Heisenberg, Schrodinger, and Ohm decide to go for a drive. Heisenberg picks everybody up. He picks up Schrodinger. He picks up Ohm. They head out onto the road. They head out onto the highway. They think that they're obeying the speed limits. You know, they're not passing people. But, you know, it's one of those highways where it's getting close to the end of the month. And if you live in the United States, you know what that means. In many states, the state troopers need to make their quotas of speeding tickets for the month. And so they got to rush and hurry up when it turns out that they're falling behind by the end of the month. So Heisenberg is driving along, looks in his rearview mirror and says, uh-oh. He sees the flashing lights behind him and he knows he's got to pull over. So he finds a safe place on the shoulder to pull over, pulls over behind him, and there's that really uncomfortably long period when the statey is behind you in his cruiser, and he's not doing anything. You just got to sit there. I mean, you in the States particularly, you do not get out of your car. By the way, what he's doing is he's running your plate. In other words, he wants to make sure that this plate is not. There's no report that the car has been stolen or that the person it's registered to is a felon or anything like that. And of course, that's not for the. I mean, look, this is probably the first speeding ticket that Heisenberg has ever gotten in his life. Okay. So finally, the cop gets out of his car and he walks up to the window and he says to Heisenberg, the driver, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And Heisenberg answers, "Nope. But I know exactly where I am." And then the trooper, in a flagrant violation of the civil rights of the drivers of the car, goes around and opens the trunk, walks back to the car, and he looks in the window and he says, "Do you know that there is a dead cat in the trunk?" And Schrodinger answers, he says, "Well, we do now." So at this point, the state trooper is really ticked off at the insolence of the people in this car, and he goes to arrest them. Ohm resists. Okay, now, this is the segment of the program which is turning into what I call, no joke is made funnier by having to explain it. But it's possible that there are some, maybe a minority, maybe a majority of people who are listening to this podcast who have never heard of Heisenberg, Schrodinger, or Ohm, and so I will explain to you. Without going into too much detail, look, sometimes we get famous for nothing at all in our lives, sometimes we get famous for one thing, and these are the one things that these people are famous for. Heisenberg, his name has become forever associated with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is as follows. For small particles on the quantum scale, in the course of making measurements, one can detect the position of a particle or its momentum, or in other words, a proxy for that would be its speed, its location or its momentum, but not both. So when the cop says, "Do you know how fast you were going?" you could say, "No," but he knows his position, right? Or it could have been the other way around. He could have known how fast he was, but not where he was. And then Schrodinger is another interesting case. For all of the good work that he did in physics, He is known for Schrodinger's paradox. And what Schrodinger meant to do by presenting this paradox is that actually what he meant to do was to display the logical inconsistency, I would say the ridiculousness of quantum theory, the probabilistic theory that a real-life particle with mass could exist in two places at once, or could have two states of being. This sort of defied logic. And yet, the math that is required to do quantum mechanics suggests that, yes, indeed, when you do probability calculations, you can actually show that a particle can be in one state or in another. And he said, this is ridiculous. If that were so, you could build a machine in which, based on the probability of whether or not a particle was in one state or another, you could devise a machine that would tip over a vial of poison and kill a living cat that was in there. And you wouldn't know if the cat was alive or dead until you opened up the box and looked, in which case the quantum states would collapse into one. But prior to that, the cat was, probabilistically speaking, both living and dead. And this, of course, is a logical inconsistency. And that's all that Schrodinger meant to say. But nevertheless, he is remembered forever for elucidating this paradox. And so when the cop opens the trunk and finds a dead cat in there, and he said, did you know that the cat was dead? And he says, well, yep, now we do, but of course we didn't before because the cat was both living and dead prior to that. And then ohm, O-H-M, is best known for the unit of resistance. That would be voltage, current divided by voltage. Let me see, V equals IR. Voltage divided by current. Wow, lights are growing dim, folks. And so his name is forever associated with resistance. Okay, sorry about that, having to explain that. But if you did indeed understand all three parts of the story, what I mean to tell you today is that it is okay. It's okay to be smart. It's okay to know stuff, and it's okay to be a nerd. And in fact, I am encouraging you all to celebrate, to advertise this fact. In fact, if you like this podcast, I hope you advertise this fact, that you tell a friend about it, that you like it, share it, give it a great review on whatever platform you're listening to. But also what I would like you to do is to tell the world about how vast your skills are and how good you truly are at what you do by going over to libertyfreelance.com. That's all one word, libertyfreelance.com, and signing up and making a profile for yourself. So this is going to do two things. The first important thing that it's going to do is that it's going to allow you to showcase your work. There's a place for a portfolio. I was having word-finding ability problems there. And that portfolio is a place where if you are one of the freelancers who is a writer or an editor, you can post links there, or you can post the product. Even statisticians, and there's a bunch of statisticians who I'm engaged in a conversation with right now, or medical illustrators. Really a terrific place to showcase your medical illustrating work. That's the first thing it'll do. The second thing that it'll do is that it will really allow you to expand your skills into areas that you perhaps are not as strong in, and that's going to be in the form of the courses, which, if you're a member, are going to be discounted to you. Right now, I am finishing up some other courses. There are 2 courses that are up there right now. And I strongly suggest that you go and check them out. So why do all of this? It's not just going to sort of exist out there in space. Part as the owner, for want of a better word, of this site, what the plan is that I'm going to make sure that clients and recruiters see this. And even if they don't see it, I am recipient of a continuous feed of job opportunities in the STEM space for freelancers, and I forward them to you by email. So it's really a great way to sort of increase your stream of income, to make yourself known, and to increase your pool of human capital. And human capital really is what it's all about. So that sort of reminds me, back to sort of personal. Last night I was having a cup of hot tea, which is my custom. Generally in the hour before bed, I have a cup of hot tea. And it was boiling, but I really wanted to have a sip. But in so doing, I burned, not badly, the roof of my mouth. And it gave me sort of an instant sore throat, which I woke up with a much milder version of this morning because it's really pretty much gone away. But because this world is crazy, and because, against my better judgment, and despite the fact that I am a sentient being and I know what's going on here, and I know what caused this sore throat, because this podcast is being recorded in the teeth of the coronavirus pandemic. I immediately thought, oh, yeah, it could be tea, but could it be something else? And that's how nuts this world is. I said, all right, I did go to a party a couple days ago. It was a party. It was a barbecue at the house in which I live. Right. Shook hands with people against my better judgment, but there was none of this. There was about a lot of Brazilian people there, and they're all about kissing and touching, and there was none of that. We certainly didn't do any of that because even Brazilians have adjusted to the new normal. But part of the new normal is that little inkling of doubt enters your head, and you say, could it be? But look, and this is because of a concept which is many of you are aware of and probably are not completely. I'm not sure I can assign a name to it, but it has to do with sort of the emotional interference of cognitive behavior. Even though we know rationally, logically, what's going on, right? This sore throat is from having foolishly burned the roof of my mouth, my uvula, on a cup of hot tea. Because coronavirus is going on, I think like, oh, all right, do I need to worry about this? I'm going to see my ancient mother at the end of the week. That's right. Next week we'll be recording from Nantucket, folks. I am blessed. But that's the kind of thinking that I hope the scientific enterprise is really going to help abolish. It sort of militates and fights against this. I continually return to Einstein, and everybody returns to Einstein, and I know I shouldn't, but I've been going through a course on general relativity, and I think that it's difficult for us to imagine how, at the time, how adjusting one's thinking was difficult then, and adjusting one's thinking is difficult now. I'm going to go out on a limb right now, folks. It's not so much of a limb. I'm willing to go on it right now. That when the history of 2020, the year 2020, is written, it's among the things that are written about it are going to be articles about the intersection of emotion and rational thought. So we make decisions emotionally and we justify them rationally. There has been so much emotion surrounding this that it is really clouding our ability to think clearly. At this time, as I speak, we're recording this on August 11th, 2020. There have been somewhere between 1 and 2% of the American population has been infected by SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of COVID-19, which is to say that 98+% of Americans have not been infected, and that's in spite of really boosted testing. The case fatality rate is turning out to be very low, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing in the sense that there's a fair amount of asymptomatic carriage of this virus, and that means that without due vigilance and due diligence, there's a tongue twister for you. I'm not going to try to say. I won't say it a second time. You could infect and kill an old person or a person with a frail immune system, and that's a problem. I'll tell you another story. When my oldest son, who's now 22, was very young, we were visiting my ancient parents. My father at the time was already quite ill. He's been gone now for about 10 years. We went to visit them. Everybody was well. However, on the Sunday that we were down there, my oldest child got the sniffles. He was catching a cold. By Thursday of that week, my father, his grandfather, was in the hospital with a viral illness. Old, frail people are old and frail, and the mild viruses that we get sometimes can kill them. This is certainly the case for. If it's the case for the common cold virus, it is certainly the case for influenza, and there's no question that it is the case for coronavirus. One of the great tragedies, and there are many tragic stories that are going to be told. One of the great tragic stories has to do with a very bad decision that was made by the Cuomo administration. He is the current governor of the state of New York. In an effort, a well-meaning effort to clear out bed space in New York City hospitals, ordered hospitals to discharge stable COVID-19 patients. In other words, they weren't going to die anymore and they didn't need hospital level of care, to discharge them back to nursing homes. And of course what this did, tragically, was kill thousands of New Yorkers. A similar decision in New Jersey killed thousands of New Jerseyans. Again, well-meaning, but misguided. The point is, what we should be doing and what we should have been doing all along is protecting the elderly and the frail, not tanking the world economy. And I'm afraid that tanking the world economy is precisely what we're in the process of doing. Look, I don't wish for it, but just to hedge our bets against the economy being totally tanked, in other words, heading for the D word, for an economic depression, such as we've only seen in my mother's childhood. We need to take action now. And what that means is turning yourself into a freelancer, opening up the world. If the world is all going to be in the same boat, really the best bet for you, for me, for everybody, is to allow your client base to be the world. Right? The world is a big room, right? And if you create, shall we say, yourself into your own medical communications company, right? You can more easily, certainly and profitably, market yourself to the world, and that's what libertyfreelance.com is really aimed to do. So, before we get too long into the show, I've been delaying telling you about this paper. It's been getting a lot of press, but there's an interesting twist about it. Also interesting that this story took until 8 years after this paper was published to make it into the news. It is a paper that was published in a rather reputable journal called Fertility and Sterility, and it was published in 2012. And the title of the article was this: Attractiveness of Women with Recto-Vaginal Endometriosis, a Case Control Study. And this is out of, I'm reading this from Retraction Watch. The article starts like this: Despite media reports announcing the retraction of a much criticized study of whether women with endometriosis were more attractive than other women, the study has yet to be retracted by the journal. Last week, this is the first week of August 2020, several news outlets picking up on a story in The Guardian, that's from the UK, said that the study, first published in 2012 in Fertility and Sterility, had been retracted. But wait a second. The study, called Attractiveness of Women with Rectovaginal Endometriosis, a case-controlled study, claimed to show that, quote, women with rectovaginal endometriosis were judged to be more attractive than those in the two control groups. Moreover, they had a leaner silhouette, larger breasts, and an earlier coitarchy. In other words, coitarchy being a fancy term for they started having sex at younger ages. So now back to the article in Retraction Watch. As we noted last week, however, the authors of the study have requested its retraction. All right? Good thing. I mean, public outrage, etc., and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. However, the study remains intact in the journal. An Elsevier title. We asked Elsevier about the status of the paper last week. Today, Andrew Davis, head of communications at the publisher, confirmed, no, this has not been retracted. This is an advance notice that the authors have requested it to be retracted. Interesting thing. So, for context, I mean, the paper on its face appears to be prima facie misogyny. There are two authors of the paper who, based on their first names, are clearly women, but this provides no protection. There is no reason that I can think of, nor my colleague Jen Gunther, who has been who I have been a fan of back since the days when I was in the blogging world, and that's a story for another podcast. There is no reason that I can see, scientific, medical, or otherwise, why attractiveness has got anything to do with endometriosis, which is a really unpleasant disorder. It's a sort of ectopic presence of cells that should be in the lining of your uterus, but instead end up in other places, which are subject to changes based on a woman's menstrual cycle, and it can be enormously painful and can screw up your life enormously. Why how attractive these women are it means anything that can potentially improve outcomes in women with endometriosis. See, when I get upset, I have trouble speaking even English. Endometriosis is difficult for me to fathom. Look, it could be the case that there is some relationship, and full disclosure, I haven't read the paper, so I'm not sure what it is that sort of the clinical implications of this study are. And by golly, look, it is online. They, at least in terms of the abstract, they do not suggest any clinical implications. And in a brief scan of the conclusions of the article, it turns out that there are no clinical implications. It's a silly article. At its roots, it almost certainly is misogynist and curious. Look, the world is a curious place. It's curious as to how this ever was how this line of inquiry ever got started. Why they bothered doing a study, and that it got published. The final sentence of the article is compelling. Listen to this, folks. However, further studies are warranted to exclude a spurious relation between attractiveness and rectovaginal endometriosis, and to rule out the potentially confounding effect of deep dyspareunia on some aspects of sexual behavior. Now, this is a spurious relation between attractiveness and rectovaginal endometriosis. As opposed to what? I mean, if it is not a spurious relationship, I'm not sure what is already. Deep dyspareunia is a really horrible euphemism for painful intercourse. Women with dyspareunia, and sometimes it can be a sign of serious underlying pathology, cannot have penetrative sex because it hurts too much. And that's really what it should say. Medicine, since really the dawn of time, has cloaked itself in obscurantist and obscure language for the purpose of bamboozling, the hoi polloi, the unwashed masses, allowing us experts to step into the breach and save the day. It's unfortunate. This is one of the reasons why I am a medical editor and writer. One of the things that I fought against when I was actually practicing medicine, and continue to this day, is precisely this sort of obscurantism, which, the veil is being pulled from this whole enterprise. The internet has really afforded people the opportunity to find out for themselves what the facts are, as long as we will continue to present those facts to people in a clear and coherent and understandable way. It's not just our job. I would say it's our responsibility. We have a responsibility to the world to communicate information which might be complicated, but to communicate it in a way not to oversimplify, not to obscure, and by gosh, never to lie to people using language. There's enough lying to go around using plain language, but to facilitate lying using medicalese or scientificese, to me, is a grave pecado, sin, a crime against language, and it shouldn't happen. Now, it turns out that the lingua franca, there's an interesting story about the origin of lingua franca, of the world today is English. Regardless of what your first language was or is, if you want to communicate in the scientific and medical space, and you want to reach the broadest possible audience, doing so clearly and consistently and in an understandable manner is in English. It used to be that if you did not speak German and you did not write in German, that you basically had no career in science and medicine. And that's I told a couple weeks ago. I told the story of Ignaz Semmelweis, one of my heroes, the father of hand washing, also a hero today in the COVID-19 era. But the reason that the really sad, tragic reason why Semmelweis did not publish earlier than he did was because he was a Hungarian and his German was not so good. And he was reticent to write in German. And the results really were tragic. But polishing your English skills is really going to help you a lot if English is not your first language, especially if you are in the space that we're talking about right now, even if you're one of our statisticians, even if you're one of our medical illustrators. And to that end, I am working on sort of a basic English course. I've got a full one right now for native speakers of Brazilian Portuguese. I teach it in Portuguese, and so it's really not for everybody, and I haven't put it up on the site. But I really should get to translating this into English. But we're getting close to the end of our half hour. I want to leave you with that. Go to libertyfreelance.com, sign up. It's only $5 a month. You can cancel anytime. You will be able to showcase your skills, learn new ones, and be the recipient of tips and gigs as they come in. And until then, until next week when, God willing, I'm going to be recording from Nantucket, wish that you will all be good to yourself and each other, and I'll talk to you next week.